Hey guys, this is DFD, aka Dark Frozen Deaths, back with another Kamihime project video. This event's going to have some very interesting stuff. Um, First and foremost, it's a raid event, so you can get help from other players, but also it's going to be a win one, so the recommended element is fire, but if you're using thunder, you're going to have a worse time, especially considering what the boss can do. So you really do want to avoid thunder at all costs in this one. It really isn't too much of a power ego type thing. If you could beat it with Thunder, but it still doesn't change the fact that it's going to make your time a lot more difficult. So unless you truly are that strong, I wouldn't use Thunder. But anyways, going on with this, like I said, there's a lot of interesting stuff. We're going to get another SSR going, so newer players might want to use this. Even later players might actually want to use this one, depending on what happens. Because there's an interesting little thing about this. But as for the weapon, it's more for the newer players because I've seen it already. And there's also SR weapons. They're not too great. And the new SR Kamihime's got some very interesting stuff. We'll go over all that. But anyways, raid event, same typical strategy if you've seen these type of videos before. But just to explain it for anybody new that watches, you go through, do different types of story progression things. Eventually you unlock a standard stage. Clear the standard stage, you get materials to open up the expert stage. Clear the expert stage, you get materials to open up the Ragnarok stage. And should you clear the Ragnarok fights, even if you join somebody else's, you'll get double souls. Any other raid fight from this event is going to give you divine souls. You get more divine souls from the expert fight, and then on top of that too, like I say, you can jump into other people's raids, so you may not even need to start your own unless you're really that dedicated for the missions. But I suggest doing at least one of each in order to get the magic jewels, if possible. But anyways, this has some very interesting strategies, so pay very close attention. Now, if you aren't one-shotting standard, because not everybody starts off that strong, but if you aren't one-shotting standard or quickly breezing through it, you have to be careful about this enemy because it has a higher combo rate. There's a chance that, and this is the thing, it converts its normal attack into multiple hits. So there's a chance you can end up getting hit like 6 times. So if it focuses on one character and hits like 6 times, yeah, that's a lot of damage. And then on top of that, in stun, it's saying something about a combo rate probability increase or something, or cancels it. Either way, it's going to probably try to decrease your combo rate when it's stunned. So that said, it's all about manipulating combos. It's not too difficult unless you get hit a lot, but all I know is this: it has 800,000 HP, just about, like 820,000 to be exact. But you're going to pretty much blow through it if you get strong enough. So until that point, you just gotta watch for the combos. Now the boss itself is going to be tricky. I've already gone over this, so I can pretty much explain what's going to happen. On Expert and Ragnarok, because it doesn't change no matter what difficulty you fight this boss on. So Expert and Ragnarok, it's going to do 2 different triggers that can make the fight extremely annoying. The triggers are if you use a buff, which is an orange or yellow type icon. If you use any buff type abilities, it's going to remove one of them for you and hit everybody. If you use any recovery type abilities, which is the green ones, it's going to recover its own HP. 50,000 in Expert, and I think it was 100,000 in Ragnarok, yeah. And then it's going to lower your own HP by 10%. Meaning that in either difficulty, you're losing 10% of your HP. The only way these won't trigger is if its charge gauge is at max. So keep that in mind. So you may want to just save your buffs and your debuffs until its charge gauge is at max. I don't know if these triggers will cause it to hurt somebody else. So that's going to be a careful type of thing. But if you have debuffs, and if you have the little red damage skills, those are fine. If the red damage skill comes with a buff, I don't think it's going to trigger either. I don't know that for sure because we haven't done the fight yet, but it's saying that it definitely triggers on the yellow or orange, whatever color you want to call that, and the green abilities. Those are the ones that will cause some problems if you're not attacking when its charge gauge is max. So when it has 2 dots or 3, just keep in mind, some characters can extend it, but it has to have full orbs. Then you can go ahead and buff your team and then do all that. Because it won't activate after the ability is activated. It only activates on the turn when you use said ability if its orbs are not maxed out. But to make things even worse is when it attacks with its charge gauge maxed out. Because its own burst, normal, puts a 1-turn corruption on one character. Raging puts a 1-turn corruption on all your characters. What makes this so dangerous is the fact that this is damage over time. It is a 5% damage attack on Raging for everybody, so everybody loses 5% of their HP. It's a 15% on the one single enemy, so they can really lose a lot. So that said, it makes both Expert and Ragnarok difficult. So you definitely want to pay attention to this fight. It's going to be very tricky and challenging even if you're on Expert. So if you're not taking out this HP very quickly, this can be a long fight if you do things very wrong. Not to mention with other people, I don't know if it's going to cause triggers on each other. If it does, this is going to be horrendous on inviting other people. Unless people know what they're doing. But the interesting thing is the fact that this boss has quote-unquote beginner level debuff resistance. So your debuffs will really land on her. It's a very good idea to try and get people that can debuff like crazy. But hopefully don't rely on your method of buffing and all of that. So for this instance, I'm probably not going to use Michael. Because she comes with 2 buffs. I'm probably going to replace her with Soul, so I don't end up getting nuked so hard. But that means if I'm using Soul's healing ability or Tish's healing ability, I have to be careful. I cannot, for the life of me, use Iris for the buffs. I have to use her for the debuff. But the fact that I'm also using Raphael means I'm going to have some turn manipulation. But if I do break out the fire team, which I'll likely do for the expert run, because I want to see how my R fire team goes up against them. But if I do break out expert for the fire, fire for the expert, then I just have to make sure I don't have anybody that buffs. But if I'm using the healers, because there's fire healers, and usually on alert rarities too. There's a fire healer on R rarity, in fact. But if I use the healers, I just gotta time it. Simple as that. But Ragnarok's a different story because there's a mission where you have, if it said it correctly, you have to use a certain little element for this one, and it may be difficult for people. But it would be a good test for the upcoming tower. So, we'll see that. But anyways, do enough fights, you'll get all these different rewards. If you're just aiming for the SSR stuff, 50 Divine Souls, 55 Double Souls. Participation points only give you raid tickets, but if I were you, I would try to get more stuff if possible. Especially since there's Dragonic Eye Shards in here. But, yeah, ignoring Nia Dawn for right now, because I'll explain her later. The weapons are either Assault or Defender, so you probably won't need the Defender one no matter where you're at in the game, because you could probably find a Defender dual weapon. In the case of Assault, it's get it if you need it, but there's definitely better weapons than these, because there's been a lot of weapons that are in the game that have dual effect. Heck, if you can actually somehow get Ori Childcon from Guild Order, you can get some of those too, if you really want to go that route. Or you can set up in Final Break weapons, and they almost always come with a second effect. So that said, you're going to want to just pass on these weapons unless you're a player starting off, because they're not all that great. Or if you're really desperate for that hammer effect for wind, because they do have a few hammer weapons, I remember. So that said, that's the only times you might want to go out your way for this. But it does have a lot of base attack power if you manage to get it. Not to mention, since this is a raid event, you can farm tickets and hopefully pull more of the SSR weapon. So if you really do have a Phantom Hammer, it's not a bad idea to try and get that. But anyways, the quest for this is simple. Pretty much clear 3 times starting your own raids, clear 3 times jumping into other people's raids. You can do those daily. R rarity Kamihime on expert, and you have to solo it, meaning no help. Those never change in all these raid events. What doesn't change to an extent is a Ragnarok fight where you have to clear it on your own, as in no help, with a certain element. The element it's saying right now is darkness. Dark is an element that's kind of lagging behind all the other ones, so it may not seem like it's doing as much potential as others. If you have the right characters, Dark can still do pretty well, I would say. But this is a good test for Tower of Malice, because some of the later enemies are definitely going to have this level of HP. So if you can clear this fight with a team of Dark characters, you are definitely looking very good for the next Tower of Malice. Because the next Tower of Malice is a light one, and it's going to focus on you using Dark element in order to get all the medals. So that's the whole thing with that. But doing the expert and Ragnarok challenges give you more raid tickets. So if you are trying to get more tickets, there you go. Now then, going into the Adon herself as a reward. It's saying that this isn't going into special attack, but instead vigor. I don't know for sure, but either way, it's still good because it's in a different frame than elemental attack and all that. But what she does, which even gives her some use as a sub slot, when you summon her, she comes out with a defense down. It's only a measly 5%, but here's what makes it so good. Unless the enemy is invulnerable to debuffs, period, point blank, this will land. That's what it said in the description. Meaning, if you summon her and the enemy's not blocking a debuff or removing it, this effect will land. So it is always going to land a 5% defensive drop. But since it's in the Adon frame, you'll probably override it with Herc's Axe, or even some skills. So who knows? But it's only a 5% drop, but it still helps. And she has a lot of attack power and a decent amount of HP too, so she is sub-slot worthy. But why you might want to keep her for wind is this one effect right here. As your HP is higher, the attack power increases. I don't know if this is special attack or vigor, like it says. It says vigor on the wiki, but it might be special attack in-game. Who knows? Because this might be at a time where they're still trying to figure out where special attack ends up. But either way, expect it to pretty much be up to a 40% damage increase for wind at max HP. Now, here's the thing. If you're trying to use it in a longer fight, you have to try and keep your HP up, because the minute your HP drops to 50%, you get nothing. So its effect can really taper off quickly. But the reason why you might want to keep her, or look for her on your friend list during burst time, is is because the fact that burst time, you come out with all your bursts full power. Like full power, like full HP bursts, period. So that's when you might want to use her. I still wouldn't if you have 100% Adoans. And if you know about my SSR Diablos videos, then even she might override this one. But if you do have, I think it was, Haresh Velger, it's hard to pronounce her name, or Hanuman, you probably don't want to use her at all. Other than that, because you likely don't have SSR Diablos, this is worth using on burst time. It's definitely worth using on burst time. You'll come out with 40% more damage output period point blank. And if it's a friend Adoan who actually is on your friend list, you even come out the gate with a 5% defense drop too. So, that said, make sure to combine her with anybody that has elemental attack for best results. Because you'll have 3 different multipliers, elemental attack, assault, and this Adoan. And you will deal with some very good damage right out the gate. It's worth keeping her. So this is the one time I would say absolutely do not sell this Adoan. It's worth having her. The only time you probably don't want to is if you got an Adoan that's giving you 100% more elemental attack or higher. So unless you have one of those 2 Adoans, I wouldn't bother selling her, no matter how much you need the orbs. Now, if you pull extra copies of her, then sell those. But definitely get her to level 100. Now, going into this last thing, this Kamihime is crazy. This is a free SR Kamihime, mind you, so keep this in mind. Now, what gives her a lot of good justice is these abilities right here. On screen, it says a lot of interesting stuff. It even says burst gauge 200. I'll explain that later, but keep in mind this is the first Kamihime that does this, and we all get her if you've played at this point, or if you manage to pull her from the raid gacha, because there's a raid ticket gacha. So, yeah, she even comes with 2 assist abilities, which is rare for an SR. But these abilities are incredible. So, here's what happens. If you use this first ability, you will, and this says give yourself dedication. Now, this is a special little effect where it will give you burst gauge increase. Flat out. It gives you burst gauge increase. No matter what happens, you get 30 burst gauge. 25 of you haven't leveled her up, but you probably should. But no matter what happens, 30 burst gauge. Now, it's saying up here that you might not be able to attack or use any abilities or something while in this state. I don't know. But the assist ability also gives you increased defense, which helps her second ability. This one will deal damage and then put a counter attack on her, which is called intercept. So it will give her some good counter damage. She'll take less damage. And it can be used every 3 turns from what it's saying when you level her up. That is very good. So every turn she can switch herself out of devotion if need be. And if you put herself in a devotion state, her defense is up, so this intercept really helps out. And then to make it even further She's got one ability where it's only available if your burst gauge is at 200. So you have to get it all the way up, which is what the second ability is. But it will consume her burst gauge, her entire 200. Oh, it says it's not consumed. Okay, so it has to be at a 200 flat out. But her burst gauge has to be at 200. And it will give you a huge boost of 350% more burst damage. 700% more burst damage if it's combined with the assist ability, which means at maximum burst value, your damage increases. So you can pull off a lot of damage with her. I don't know if it raises the burst cap. Like, I don't know if it's increasing the upper limit. But if you have a 200% burst gauge and then use her third ability, you'll get 3 times the burst damage from what it's saying. Now, this is some serious burst damage. She's that strong as an SR. And the whole thing with this whole 200 burst gauge, this is the effect. It increases the upper limit of the burst gauge to 200. This is one of the first characters in the game to do so. But when you burst, it only consumes 100. When you burst with her, it only consumes 100. That means if you do it correctly, you can burst 2 turns back to back. And even if you burst with other people, it's still going to be 100, period. So keep that in mind. It just means she can hold more than 100 bursts. And it's recommended to do so. You should be trying to get to 200 and then fire off her third ability. Burst with that, then burst again the turn after for extra damage. But all in all, if you use her correctly, she is very, very strong. My suggestion to you is probably use ability 1 with ability 2. Definitely use ability 1 and get her into devotion status. Like, here's the thing. Make sure she's in devotion status first off with the first ability, when you plan on using the second ability. The other good time to use devotion status is if it's something like, say, you have darkness or dizzy on your character. Throw this on there. As long as your abilities aren't sealed, this helps you so much to build up burst gauge. Because again, I don't know if devotion prevents her from attacking. If it doesn't, this is going to be even more absurd. But if it does, then you got to time when you use this first ability. But whenever you plan on intercepting, it definitely helps out. So try to time being in devotion status from the first ability with her second one, most likely. Or try to be in devotion status when you know you have a lower chance of attacking or probably can't attack. And then the third one, always use this at 200 bursts. You cannot use it any other time. When you get her to 200 bursts, that's when you can use this ability. Since it doesn't consume burst gauge, nuke the ever-living crap out of enemies with this one. And because of how her burst gauge works, I would suggest putting her in one of the first few slots. So that way it's not going to really interrupt anybody else. I would say put her in the second slot unless you have somebody that can, say, like Michael, who feeds burst gauge to everybody else. Unless you have somebody that can really get their burst gauge up and whatnot. It's stuff like that. But anyways, that's all for this. This Kamihime is crazy for an SR. I'd say she's an SSR in disguise if you use her right. But anyways, that's all for this. More of this is definitely going to come soon because I want to try and record using this Kamihime when I level her. I'm definitely going to record the event itself. But anyways, that's all for now, guys. I suggest you try the Ragnarok mission if you can actually start your own fight, just to see how good you are for Guild Order. I mean, Guild Order too, because Barong was a bitch. But Tower of Malice, I meant to say, definitely try to do the Ragnarok fight for Tower of Malice's sake, because it would show you your limits of your strongest Kamihime. Because you're definitely going to be facing Dark Element. I mean, you're definitely going to be needing Dark Element. So, that's how that is. But anyways, and like I said, this Kamihime is actually worth. This Kamihime is worth. Anyways, that's all for now, guys. More of this is definitely going to come soon, and take care.